Ah, ben j'aurais dû à 1h15. Please come in.
Nobody here?
We're going to wait a little bit. We're going to wait 2 minutes for people to come in. Just checking my mic that way. Alors. Okay, I think we're about to start if some more people want to come in. It's hard after Bourlange to pick up a session, have the same level of energy and passion. But we have a great topic today. It's about the impact of a connected world and eventually some global governance to make sense out of it. I don't know if you're aware, but I mean, most of you, I'm sure, are very aware of the hiccup this morning with the time, because the time wasn't changed. It was supposed to change, so everybody's completely confused. Nobody knows when his flight is at. It's just a total mess, and that's a recipe for a connected world. So it's a great way to start our panel today. Maybe some of you are aware, but according to IDC, our digital universe will be made of 180 zettabytes. That's a word I've never pronounced before. Zettabytes by 2025. And what it means, a zettabyte, it's 800 followed by 21 zeros. So I don't see if you see the amount of data that digital universe is. And it would take about 450 million years to download it in one stream. So huge amounts of data. The more it goes, we all know that the more interconnected we are through our phone, our mails, our websites, our social networks, but also public infrastructure, such as a commuter train, or even personal appliances like our toaster. Most of us, and me included, have given out freely our personal information in exchange of free services that we can hardly live without today. And this wealth of information has created, in turn, a wealth of new businesses and services. It can be better targeted advertising, for example, or specific services that have been developed thanks to artificial intelligence. We can also foresee that with the advent of new smart cities. So some see data as a new set of asset class. Some see the happening of an infonomics market, where which would be led by how much data is worth. But a lot of yet is to happen. For now, we know that data tells a lot about each and one of us, and we also know that firms and governments don't necessarily look at it the same way. So to explore the wild, wild west of this connected world, we have this morning, next to me, François Barrault, who's chairman of IDATE DigiWorld, Mr. Chang Dae-whan, who's chairman of Maekyung Media Group from South Korea. Next to him is Francis Gurry, the Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization. Next to him is Patrick Nicolet, who's the Group Technology Officer at Capgemini Sogeti. And finally, Tobby Simon, Commissioner with the Global Commission for Internet Governance. So we're going to start with usage, and François Barrault, how all that interconnected world really changes our habits and the way we're doing things.
Thank you. I'm lucky because I had my first computer in 1977, and I could be an actor. I've been also a programmer. I've been observing the evolution of technology, but I'm not going to talk about technology, all the buzzwords, IA, cloud, but I will talk about what are the influence of technology on the way we live, we communicate, and we operate on a daily basis. The first thing, and I've said this on this stage, but it's more important than ever, the big revolution that technology has brought to us is the instant access to knowledge. Knowledge has been an asset discriminating the poor and the rich during centuries. And at the end of the beginning of 2000, through blogs, through Wikipedia, it became an asset shared. And all of a sudden, on an estate basis, everything was shared through blog, and through some website. So what does it mean for the people? When you keep information for you during ages and you share it, it creates new reflex. You share your car, you share your home, you share your apartment, you share your office, you share information. And what does it mean for the business is if you share your car, you have business like BlaBlaCar popping up. If you share your experience, you take pictures, you share with your friends on the various social networks what you do. Then you can rent also your apartment through Airbnb. I have a team right now looking for an office in Paris. There are 10, and the 3 offers they got was not traditional office, but co-location. So what does it mean for business people? It totally changed the way they have to operate. Carlos Ghosn really explained very well yesterday. During many years, car makers were producing cars. Now they are going to produce a service to go from A to B. Another thing which has a big impact on our life. This morning, you should have all received the statistic on how you've been using your iPhones. Because we're reasonable people, we have had maybe 100 interactions during the week. But some kids in the US, they have 500 connections per day. So what does it mean for the brain? Instead of delivering a thought process during 4 hours, that's what we used to do, reading a book or whatever, every 7-10 seconds, the brain is attacked. What does it mean then? It means the neuronal topology of the brain is being reconfigured. It creates addictions, it creates also a new form of depression, and it creates also some avatars. I organized a board 3 weeks ago with 14 people, and I told them no iPhone during 4 hours and no tablets. And it was funny to see the reaction of the people, because after 10-20 minutes, some of them were really in an addiction mode, like cigarettes or alcohol or whatever. So little by little, this interaction with the brain become an addiction. Another impact also is we all communicate on a daily basis, on an asynchronous basis. We have friends who are overseas or families or whatever, and we share experience. So the more we communicate like that, the more we need to be together. So a new set of business are exploding: music concert, sports bar. And now in Paris, as an example, you can see in London, after work, hundreds of young people hanging around the bar. One thing also which I've changed, technology has changed in our habit, is the way we shop. We have all e-shop. But what are the impact on the network of shops? All the corner stores now are doing very well because it's convenient. All the big shops, the big mall like Apple Store is an experience, so you go there and hang around. But the in-between shops is not convenient, it's not fun, and it's not an experience. So except the Apple Store where you go there to hang around, as an example in London, 35% of the commercial surfaces between 400 square meters and 8,000 meters have no future. Another example is entertainment. In our younger age, we were buying LPs, CDs, cassette, DVDs, and whatever. And now, nobody buys cassette. You go on the net, you have Netflix. And not only that, but now all the young generation do not look at TV on the linear TV, but are looking at Netflix and things like that. So my point here, and I'm not going to describe everything, that little by little, not only the technology changed the way we operate, but change also our relationship with things, the way we operate. That means because the change is very fast, the impact on the traditional business of CapEx and OpEx, create a huge paradigm which is very difficult to anticipate. And Carlos Ghosn yesterday really in-phased the facts. So just to finish, what is next? In the next 18 months, there will be 3 main revolutions that will even change more our life. First of all, the speed of communication will be multiplied by 10. So the 5G or the 5G plus will move our communication from 100 meg to 1 gigabit or 10 gigabit. Second, the next generation of sensor, IoT, quantum computing will make the things much faster, much smaller, and in a few years from now, you will have a chip in your body, like a plane, will reset all the data and say, you can work, you can sleep, you can drive, and whatever. And last, the next generation of algorithm will take in the cloud all the programs, aggregate it on a real-time basis at the speed of light, and then we'll provide on a real-time basis all the algorithms to make the things faster and cheaper and whatever. And here, and we're not going to talk about artificial intelligence, all this change, the day it will be faster than our human reflex, then we can talk about IA. Just a data, the speed of internet is about 300,000 kilometers per second is the light, it's speed of light. In the brain, the speed of data, is 100 meters per second. So there is a competition right now between the brain and between the process of watching things and operating things as a reflex. Mm-hmm. So is the future bright or not? I don't know, but we need to be very careful about how do we use technology because it impacts our life, the way we communicate, and we need to be very careful with our kids to make sure they still have a normal life and play with toys like we've done when we were younger.
Toys. Yes. Thank you, François. Well, this is a good way to introduce our next panelist because you're going to talk to us about smart cities. And of course, the augmentation of speed, the new sensors, that's going to change drastically the way the urban life change. And you have specific example in what is happening in South Korea you can talk to us about.
Let me go to the podium and talk.
Of course. Please.
After much confusion of weather and timekeeping, I'm finally here to deliver my speech today. It takes a long time to come over here, about 12 hours to Paris, then another 3 hours to Rabat. And my newspaper has done a lot of research and provided some suggestion to important global issues. For instance, in year 2013, with special interest in cities, I have a declaration of a modern city for Seoul and Busan. Those are two major cities in Korea. And today, I will present case studies of Korean smart cities. I'd like to point out that smart cities are emerging as global connectors that can solve problems that nations cannot. If you look at this graph, the cities have grown expensively with high concentration of resources and smart people. Consequently, cities have grown faster than nations. If you look at the case of United Kingdom, London grew much faster than UK as a whole, and Washington, D.C. did that too. In contrast, nations are becoming more divided, as seen in the events like Brexit and protectionism in the United States. And many smart cities are, popping up all over the world. Sorry. Okay. About 152 cities are, spring up here and there. And global companies like Amazon, Google, and Alibaba, they have their own ideas to make smart cities here and there. And Saudi Arabia, which gets a lot of attention these days, government has recently announced its $500 billion smart city project. It's called NEOM. Okay. So many of these governments and global companies are initiating smart city projects. So what's the definition of a smart city? Okay. A smart city is referred to as a city whose infrastructures are connected in a network through information and communication technologies, which is geared towards improving the quality of the services in energy, transportation, medicine, and education. What are the technologies for smart city? And we have just talked 5G. 5G is in practice very soon. And big data and blockchain technology that will have lots of impact on our lives. And AI and robotics. Also, we have a city as a platform. You have heard a lot about building proper infrastructures are crucial for establishing a smart city. Such infrastructures, for example, Hyperloop and 24-hour remote control medical service, and even flying car roadmap. These infrastructure constructions need to be done in the direction that will both sustain and improve the qualities of human lives and business environments. 19th century, introducing car was a big thing. It was a platform number one. And 20th century, we had the smartphone. That's platform number two. And now I think smart cities is platform number three. And cities are emerged as third platform. Smart city, okay. I try to call IDEA city, coming from Plato. IDEA city means you have a digital twin, so everybody can join the digital twin and suggest your own ideas. And then finally, decision maker, mayor or vice mayor, they have an idea city, IDEA city. Plato never thought it was possible to realize the notion of IDEA. However, in the IDEA city, it becomes possible to realize such a future city in the three-dimensional cyberspace. Many of urban problems will be simulated in virtual city to find the most suitable solution. In order to achieve a smart city, you need a digital platform. And many countries, Estonia, Finland, and Andorra, small country, they are going under many of their digital platform. Okay. Estonia successfully turned its administration into digital platform and issues e-residency to any interested people around the world. I'm an e-resident in Estonia. I can open up a bank account, and I can even set up a company there, do business around the world. Andorra and Finnish city of Kalasatama both are transforming the entire state and city into digital platform. I have an interesting picture here. Economy grows together with urbanization. Okay, look at the Korea. Korea grows well with the urbanization rate. Also Thailand did this so. But if you look at the Italy, it looks somewhat stagnant. And now they are throwing away money to relatively poor people, and it will bring them more stagnancy. And China has an economic development strategy, which is urbanization of the backward countries here and there. And they had a high-speed railroad, highways, and faraway company. They are doing quite well with the 5G. And also, low-cost carriers, low-cost airline are changing in Asian space quite a lot. Okay, case of Korea, we are commercializing 5G in this year, so that will change many Korean lives. Virtual reality and many things will be changed. Now I turn to some smart city project happening in Korea. We have a capital city, new capital city for administration, is aiming to make a map of human emotions through neuroscience and big data analysis. Now the neuroscience is a big thing everywhere. For example, if a person who feels distressed gets in a self-driving car, the person will be automatically driven to a right place for relaxation. Relaxation may be a spa, or drinking joints or movie theater. But if you end up watching a sad movie, you will be more depressed. So I don't know how we're going to have this emotional problems together with artificial intelligence car sharing system and 5G data analysis space. In other words, City Sejong is building an emotional data platform. Many platforms are being built in South Korea. And go to Busan, it's named Eco Delta City. Eco-friendly smart city of water. Okay. This is quite interesting idea. The temperatures of water at the riverbeds are lower than the outside temperature in the summer and higher during the winter. Therefore, if the water from the riverbeds can be utilized by the buildings, energy can be saved. Okay, Busan City is now collecting various data of water quality and quantity and temperatures for water management so that it can construct eco-friendly resources management data platform. Sounds interesting. I don't know, but it can be realized. Not only governments carry out smart city projects. I know there's a private company initiated city project. They call it Green Energy Data Platform. They have solar energy panels and smart grid system, and they want to invite many startup companies from overseas. Okay, there are many benefits of smart cities, but I talk about three benefits: quality of life, economic dynamics, and sustainability. We like to enhance these factors through smart city projects. Smart city is a key to maybe global governance. Let's look at the Switzerland Zug. It's a very small city, small town, where cryptocurrency initial coin offering was first implemented. New jobs surged. While the whole city population remains at 30,000 people, 40,000 jobs were created due to a formation of a virtual city with a digital platform that deals world crypto transactions. Also, Estonia, a country with a population of only 1.3 million people, predicted that its e-residents will reach 10 million by year 2025. These examples show how digital platform can solve the small population and low employment problems. Yesterday, we talked a lot about the problems of North Korea as nuclear ambition. But North Korea is a very interesting country when you talk about smart city. It can become a smart city test bed because it's very poor and there's nothing much. And so if North Korea, Kim Jong-un, really abandons its nuclear ambitions and the United States lift up economic sanctions, there will be a lot of things happen. We had a Japanese professor. He talked about the war reparation fund they have in Japanese government. That's almost like 80 billion US dollars, if I remember the numbers correct. Okay, since North Korea does not have any regulations on expansion of the fourth industrial revolution technologies, it is the most suitable site for applying my IDEA city. Moreover, Korea has the experience in proper technology of exporting a new city construction model. We've done a lot of construction activities in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Saudi Arabia. South Korea has lots of experience building new towns here and there, even in Iraq and Iran. IDEA city will not only solve the underdeveloped problem of North Korea, but also be able to contribute to peace and prosperity of the world. Finally, we have four global leaders here. Okay, President Trump. He's a real estate developer, and I'm sure he likes to convert Manhattan into a smart city. But he hasn't said anything, but sooner or later in his Twitter, it might come out. And Xi Jinping of China, okay, I already said he wants to urbanize backward region of China. He's already building smart city between Beijing and Tianjin. It's a huge project for him. And Mr. Kim of North Korea, he wants showcase to show his people that he's 38 years old or something, but he wants to tell the people he's doing very well and he's the great leader after his father and his grandfather. And South Korean President Moon, he's designated 2 cities already, and one for administration, the other one for eco-friendly Delta City in Busan, and another project he has now, after meeting Kim Jong-un, is a peace town, building a peace town in military demarcation region between North-South. So leadership is very important carrying out smart city projects. All the global smart city examples I've talked about earlier were possible because of the political leadership that drove the projects forward. I think we are living in a connected world. Smart cities will connect the world faster. And smart cities will make the world decentralized. So I know that President Trump, he has big idea that America first. Now it's turning to America only. But I don't think his ideas will be that successful. He'll face blockchain, AI, and all the new technologies that will challenge him. So good luck with him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're very happy that you found a good way for Mr. Trump to occupy his time by building smart cities instead of doing other stuff. This is a good, actually a good way to go to your presentation, Mr. Nicolet, because we're going to talk about politics, geopolitics, and data. All of this, as I'm sure you've noticed, is a little intrusive because if, according to François, I'm starting to have sensors in my body, and if you're mapping my emotions, that doesn't leave me much room left. So, Monsieur Nicolet, if you want, I don't know if you want to be on the stage or stay here. You're fine, so it's up to you.
Thank you, Virginie. What I want to focus on is what we define as the geopolitical importance of data. So first, a few numbers on data. There is an explosion of data production. The production of data has been multiplied by 20, is forecasted to be multiplied by 20 between 2015 and 2025. The big part of this will be data generated by machines, not only human interaction for sure. The volume of cross-border exchange of data has been multiplied by 45 between 2005 and 2014. And it shows the importance of it. And then the infrastructure that support this, called cloud computing, was covering less than 30% of global data in 2010 and will cover more than 50% by 2025. Considering that there is, from a geopolitical standpoint, an imbalance already because the big part of this infrastructure is controlled by US companies and now, more recently, through big investment from Chinese companies. So what does it mean for us? And I will try to give some of the pattern we see about the strategies or the priorities given by key geographies and countries. In the US, very clearly, there was no government direction, but US firms went after wealth. They were the first to identify that data was a source of wealth, and they focus on generating money. That's what you read about the GAFAM, the Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft. They are. You look at their market capitalization these days, you look at the volume of CapEx. The big cloud providers can spend up to 1 billion of capital expenditure per month. It's not only on cloud, it's on software, hardware, on all the services they develop. This is a formidable force. And so they are going after this and creating this wealth, which give them extraordinary means to take different action. In China, if I would look today, it's more about the power. It's not so much about the wealth. They will go after it. And one good example is China's social credit system, which is the use of data to rank citizens based on data that you can collect on them. And then you define where you add some information that you get from the community, and then define which kind of public services you can access, even if you can have a passport, if you can go out of your region, and if you have a passport, if you can leave the country. So there is a use of data around power. If you look at Russia, I would make a shortcut to say it's more an intelligence-based use of data, including deception. You see it in the intervention, and again, I have to be careful because formal attribution has not been done everywhere, so I have to be careful, but there are evidence of interference in election in the Western society. There is a way also about how you use data not only around fake news, but to create real disinformation campaign. And Europe has given what we would expect the classical social democratic answer, which the symbol of it is a new regulation called GDPR, which is a protection of privacy related to data, considering that what I often say is that we try to manage a schizophrenia here in Europe, because the consumers have given already all their data without many consideration on their privacy to the big American players first and foremost. But as a citizen, they are asking protection, they are asking now the right to be forgotten, etc. And Europe, and I don't say it's unnecessary, Europe has responded this way. And that creates, we see this a clear imbalance about, in my view, about what we do and related to the importance of data and how this will shape eventually. And this will, in my view, fundamentally influence the relationship and the geopolitical relationship. And I would propose, to be practical, 3 areas where we might want to focus on. And the number one is the redefinition of trust through technology. Trust is fundamental to all human interaction, be it business, be it between state and everything. Technology is fundamentally changing the way trust will be handled. Part of trust will be in technology. The relationship of the citizen to trust, if you think of a platform like Airbnb, how is it that you would let foreigners sleep in your bed just because the platform is telling you that it's okay to do it? So we see these changes in the way people approach, including the relationship to their government, to their authority. And there is an element of mistrust, because through fake news, we discussed it last year, by the way, the World Policy Conference, this is creating again, a difficult path forward, because you don't have the trust within your own nations, and then you have to build trust with other nations in the context that I just described. The second thing, in my view, the second topic, and it's one that is hard to start upon, and I know it looks like a buzzword, it's around ethics. I think we underestimate the importance of this discussion when it comes to artificial intelligence. And I don't speak of transhumanism because it's an extreme and people can say, yes, we know. But how is it that we had an extensive debate when biotechnology came, and here, probably because the level of abstraction is too high, we don't have it. But this creates fundamental questions about how you are going to design the technology and the technology solution going further. And the last point, obviously, is how you are going to govern. And I know this will be addressed probably by you, how you govern these elements. But I take one example, and I know Tobby will develop on it, and I will finish on this. Take cybersecurity. I mentioned it briefly this morning during the Young Leader panel, but it's a real issue. This is the Wild West. Cyber warfare is going as we speak. All our companies, corporations are attacked as we speak right now during the entire day. And then it's something new. There is no regulation, nothing. We just have to protect ourselves. It's a cost of doing business. It's a cost of operating your administration. So it's a tax that comes on top of it. The reason is that wealth is moving online, obviously. But we need something to govern. And I want to mention one practical initiative to which we'll adhere to. It's the General Counsel of Microsoft, Brad Smith, has identified this problem a while ago and has launched an initiative called Tech Accord, which is an industry-wide initiative where people come join and promise that they will behave appropriately, to be defined, and then also to create a kind of Geneva Convention for the United Nations that will set the rules of engagement, as we had to do it in war, because this is cyber warfare, what is happening on top of cyber criminality. And just to finish on this, also to be concrete, and to mention, because you were the WPC, we have launched with Tommaso, who is here, a study with the IFRI that you can find here on Europe, subject or object in the geopolitics of data. So you will find here more information. We will continue with a workshop, and we will continue to work on this, because I think this is a theme, a topic that is not, that didn't get the level of attention it should have. And I tried to explain that there are already broad implications. We don't see it, we don't pay enough attention, in particular in Europe. I think our partners are much more aware of the power of data than we are, and we should take conscious of it. I'm happy to take questions afterwards on some of my statements.
Thank you. It's a very sharp contrast with the ideal world of smart cities, where everything's, for eco, sustainability, and growth, and the world you're describing, that it's much, much more worrisome. So Tobby, maybe we can address that little confusion and imbalances. Is there a way to put some governance into this?
Thank you, Virginie. I want to first thank Thierry, Song Nim, and the organizers of the World Policy Conference for inviting me to be a panelist in this session. I would like to briefly share the objective, state both the paradox and the challenge, outline 4 key issues that I believe will have a bearing on the way we live in a hyper-connected or connected world. With the permission of the chair, I would also like to touch upon the need for effective global governance as a means to optimize the benefits of a connected world, or otherwise be prepared to face the collateral damage. Let me state the objective first. Basically, it's to identify the gap between yesterday's structures and today's complex problem in a connected world. And here lies the paradox. Globalization, while it is the most progressive force in history, can also be the cause of the most severe crisis of the 21st century. Consequently, citizens will see integration as risky and could become xenophobic, protectionist, and nationalist. So what is the challenge? It's quite evident. The challenge is the future is unlike the past. Our capacity to manage current global events has not kept pace with the growth in the complexity and danger of those events. At the national level, the biggest challenge for politicians worldwide and policymakers is the need to balance the enormous benefits of global openness and connectivity with national priorities and policies. For example, the need to protect local jobs and local industry. Let me also state the 4 issues that I wanted to speak about. One is need to repurpose global governance with respect to global commons. Okay? This is spoken in many forums, but I'd just like to shortly describe this. The repurposing of global governance to meet the new challenges is vital. Nations are divided and cannot agree on common approaches. And within nations, there is no consensus or leadership on critical global issues. The number of countries now involved in negotiation exceeds more than 200, and the complexity of these issues have become multifold. The interconnected has grown and has as much as the effect of media and pressures on politicians. So what is the tragedy of the global commons? It's something that we had in the past. It is the over-exploitation of common resources. Like we had herders in the past, no single person has the motivation, single person or government has the motivation and the responsibility to limit the number or extent of grazing of livestock, and so these resources will eventually collapse. For example, the internet. It's a shared global resource, and cybercriminality is a common threat that requires intervention both at the global and national level. One cannot fight cybercriminals who transcend national borders with justice systems that are constrained by national jurisdictions. Number two, cyber attacks could trigger massive outages in a hyper-connected world. I'll give the example of WannaCry, which all of you know. WannaCry ransomware was a cyber attack that targeted machines running the Microsoft Windows operating system. We all know that it affected companies and individuals in more than 150 countries, including governments and large industrial organizations. Now, let us closely look at the vector. First, the attack was on the British National Healthcare System, the NHS, then on Spain's largest telecommunication company, Telefonica, went on to the French car manufacturer Renault, Russian cell phone operator Megafon, US-based FedEx, an attack on the Ukrainian state power company, the airport, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, the Ukrainian central bank, the aircraft manufacturer Antoinette, and on to Maersk, one of the largest shipping companies in the world, TNT, one of the largest packet forwarders in the world. The attack also extended to Russia's biggest oil producer, Rosneft, and Saint-Gobain, one of the largest industrial companies in France. So is there a narrative behind this? For us, it's a signaling. And the signaling and the messaging is quite clear. In a hyper-connected world, the adversary has the potential and ability to attack or disrupt an industry, a government, or a critical infrastructure anywhere in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the red flag. And what you saw was only a signaling that it could be done, which means we can expect something a little more harder in the coming months. Second, digital wildfires in a connected world. In 1938, when the radio became widespread, thousands of Americans were confused by the adaptation of a H.G. Wells book, The War of the Worlds, with a news broadcast that jammed police stations and the telephone lines in the panic belief that the US was being invaded by Martians. Okay? It is difficult to imagine that a radio broadcast can cause a comparable misunderstanding today, in part because broadcasters have learned to be more cautious and responsible. The media is more regulated, and listeners have learned to be more savvy and skeptical. But the internet remains an uncharted territory, fast evolving. Social media allows information to be transmitted around the world at breakneck speed. While the benefits of all this is obvious and documented, our hyper-connected or interconnected world could also witness rapid spread of fake news and fake narratives, either intentionally or unintentionally, which can lead to misleading or provocative positions with serious consequences. The chances of this happening exponentially in this world today is far more than when the radio was introduced as a disruptive technology. Radio is a communication of one to many, while the internet is that of many to many. And finally, digital democracy. Elections are the cornerstone of democracy. We have touched upon this. They are made vulnerable by both information technology and cyber attacks, as we saw in Russia, in India, in Europe, in many parts of the world. Advances in information technology are also transforming the democratic systems. Power over information has become decentralized, fostering new types of communities and different roles for government. The increased involvement of people in political debates is evident on a greater scale on social networking sites such as Twitter and Facebook. The internet allows for greater freedom, allowing citizens to challenge and criticize a fundamental tenet of democracy. Let me conclude. Global leadership governance in a hyperconnected world has become distributed and collaborative. We are all part of much a broader problem-solving network with many high-performing individuals and organizations, public and private, working on different parts of different problems or on the same part of the same problem. I reiterate, global governance is not about leaders charting their own course anymore. They are about helping networks solve problems with the best and the most current thinking that is available. I conclude again, collaboration is the new competition, and the more valuable our contributions are, the greater our influence will be in a hyper-connected world. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. I'm glad you had a little positive note in your conclusion, because I was completely freaking out. But this round table is really going downhill. Every presentator is saying something worse than the other. So Francis Gurry, we're hoping on you to bring back something a little positive in that. I mean, I don't want to, fly away scared out of my mind. Can we make, we definitely understand there are a lot of risks. There's a question of trust. Is it possible to, we definitely need to find new forms of governance. The idea of putting networked intelligence together is kind of, it gives me a little hope. What do you make of it, Mr. Gurry?
Well, thank you very much, Virginie, and ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. Thank you also to Thierry de Montbrial for this invitation. Look, I'm not going to be such an optimist, I'm afraid, well. But nor a pessimist necessarily, but I'll focus more on the problem than the solution, because I think we can't design the solution until such time as we have a thorough understanding of the problem, and we're getting there, I think, but I'm not sure we're completely there. Now, I would say as far as the impact of the connected world on global governance is concerned, well, the greater the connection, the greater the dependence that is created. And the greater the dependence, the greater the vulnerability and risk. And so I think we've seen that, and it's been described on the panel this morning by many persons. We see it, the risk to privacy, which is playing out in the policy discussions and the governance discussions on the protection of personal data. The risk to business assets, it's playing out in terms of how we deal with espionage, so cyber espionage. The risk to the integrity of data, which is playing out in the fake news area. The risk to security, which is playing out in the cyber warfare area. So I think that something we can say about these risks is that they are qualitatively different from the risks of the past. And they're qualitatively different for several reasons. First of all, because they are international in character. And that's just an obvious thing, of course. But it's not the case with risk frameworks of the past, necessarily. So the second is that they are occurring at an accelerated speed. And that has been mentioned again by others. And the third is, I think, that they're very radical. And that's, I think, a product of the accumulation of knowledge. I mean, Sherlock Holmes says in one of his books, knowledge begets knowledge as money bears interest. And that's what's happening, of course, with the degree of knowledge in the world. Now, our institutions, I think, were designed for a completely different risk framework than from these risk frameworks. And if you think in terms, since we've been speaking about cities, if you think in terms of the walls of a city, a walled city is one governance response to the sort of risks that were out there. Now we have a completely qualitatively different sort of risks that we are confronting. And that is causing, I think, radical disruption in the efficiency and the efficacy of our governance institutions because they were designed for something else, frankly. And we can see that in many different ways. I'll give you one example, which comes out of the nature. I mentioned three things where I think which differentiate risks these days in the connected world. One of them is speed. And coming out of that, of course, we find ourselves confronted with a series of situations which our institutions have not had the time to reflect upon and consider. So for as long as we live in a world in which you can do anything except that which is expressly prohibited, as opposed to a world in which you can only do that which is permitted, and I'm not advocating a change, but for as long as we live in that sort of a context, then science and technology, particularly with the speed and with the accumulation, are going to be way out in front of our institutions and that were designed for dealing with different nature, different risks, different risk frameworks. And there are many examples, but I think the effect of it is that governance is reverting increasingly to the market and technology, or if you like, in order, it's reverting increasingly to technology, which is actually determining social directions or the direction of society, and business models are built by the market upon that basis. Nothing to do with governments. And you can see this in anything from relatively trivial examples to major examples. I can give you one from my field very, very briefly, which is music. So in the last 20 years, there has been a revolution, of course, in the production, the distribution, and the consumption of music. Everything has changed. Now, we have reached a situation in which, in the last 2 years, for the first time in 20 years, the size of the music industry worldwide has grown as opposed to reduced. And digital market sales, rather, are increasing. That situation was produced by the market, not by governments. And I'm, saying that as someone whose job is supposed to get international cooperation around solutions for this sort of a situation. It's been produced by different and more accessible business models. So we have a situation in which a lot of governance and a lot of social direction is being set by the market and technology, regardless of ideologies, just as a consequence of the speed and the radical nature of technologies. When you come to the international solution to that, since one of the features of the new risk framework is that these risks are international, of course it's much worse than at the national level. It's much slower than at the national level, but we have, of course, international problems or risks, if you like. And in addition, at the international level, I think one of the things, and this comes back to a bit with one of the points that Tobby was making, where I'm not sure I'm in total agreement with him, what we see at the international level is that these areas of risk are also the areas of competition. So let me give you the example of Ebola and the World Health Organization. Now, it's relatively easy in the World Health Organization, to get a unity of purpose about the suppression of Ebola because everyone's interests are the same. We all want to suppress it for different reasons. That's not the case in science and technology because it's the center of competition between countries. And this is a newer feature because it wasn't always so much the center, although I'd argue it's often been near the center. So that's one thing. And secondly, it's also the center of difference. It's the center of disparities. The great disparities in the world are produced by technological differences in technological capacity. So we face a situation which is a perfect storm in many respects. New risks, different nature, they're stressing and disrupting our governance institutions that we've known because they were designed for walled cities, or to just take an extreme example, different situations. And difficult to move forward because this is also the area where we have huge differences and the area of competition. So I would say, if I may just make one or two small other points. These two factors, that is that science and technology are really the basis of competition and also the basis of the biggest disparities, this is producing a situation in which I think it's a contribution to the movements that we see towards unilateralism as a policy posture rather than multilateralism. Because if you're going to be competing, you go to your national basis to compete. So they're contributing also to these movements we're seeing towards national approaches, unilateral approaches as opposed to multilateral approaches. But on the other hand, it's also the case that because of interconnection, that the first mover, provided it has scale, is going to be determining the global rule. And I think that we see from, I think it was Patrick who mentioned the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. So the European Union has moved first. And the scale of the European Union is such that the whole world has to comply with it. Now, it might be different if a small country, an island state, introduces the regulation, but when it's the European Union. And furthermore, there is a growing pressure, which we've seen over the last couple of days, with Tim Cook, for example, from Apple, speaking out and saying, well, the United States needs to develop a regulatory framework also for the protection of personal data, plus the social movements on the internet all produce a situation in which influence is being exercised in a different way, and it's being exercised by the first mover. And I'm not saying that the EU deliberately chose to do that, but that's the impact these days of an absence of multilateral, a reversion for lots of reasons to unilateral approaches. But we will also see that first moves are made by China, and first moves, of course, are made by the United States of America, despite its non-regulatory culture. So this produces a situation which I don't think is very optimistic for risk management in where we have a completely new set of risks to deal with. In conclusion, I would say we really have to rethink our governance models, really radically rethink our governance models to deal with new forms of risk.
Thank you very much, Francis. I'd like to try something here. First, I'm going to try to summarize quickly what I think is the 3 solutions of governance you're proposing, and I'd like you to vote on it. And see what is the one that appeals best to you. So if I go to you, Francis, you're really the liberal one. That's the guys doing, the new technology. They're going to find the way, the scale to put out the good answers. I'm not sure why, but because at least they'll have the power to implement at some point. You say the risks are super important. We need some kind of a new government body. You're much more confident, Monsieur Nicolet, much more confident in multilateral. It's a hard word for me to say, multilateralism than Francis Gurry is. And you, I think, have a very different approach because it's none of those two. It's let's take the intelligence where it is on the network. Let's try something really different. It's provide governance within the network with the intelligence we have here. So we have something very spread out with taking the best of what we can provide eventually. That's, let's say it's A, it's you, Tobby. B, Mr. Nicolet, which is let's try to put some sense, organize it the way we know how to do it. And basically it's a super body, with new laws and try to stop the risks. And you, C would be you, Francis.
Well, I described more than endorsed.
Okay. So it's not yours, but the description of Mr. Gurry's, which would be coming out from the actors.
What's happening.
So let's say what do you think is the most likely to happen? If you don't mind helping me out here, but do you think Tobby is on the right path? Do you think Mr. Nicolet? Alors, let's start with Tobby. Do people believe that there's intelligence in the network and we can use it for governance? Does anybody think that here? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so let's say 10 to be generous. Now let's go to Mr. Nicolet. So rather more classical solution, probably better organized, easier for us to apprehend. A new super governing body. So I see 1 here. Okay, we're a little more comfortable with your solution.
20.
Voilà, you even have somebody
If I
here.
apply the same rule, it's 20.
Okay, yeah, apparently it's the good one. And last, alors what Francis described, who agrees with his description of the world, and how, and the analogy with music was interesting, how this whole business changed and evolved and set its new rules. So does anybody at all? Nobody. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I'd say, Monsieur Nicolet, you're first, and you guys are for a tie, which is pretty good for a debate because those are very, very difficult questions. So we have 15 minutes left. Yeah, we have some questions, and I'd love to take them. Can you pass the mic to this lady, please? And then we have questions in the front. Thank you very much.
Oui, Sabine Janssen, ma question s'adresse à Patrick Nicolet. Vous avez évoqué les dangers de la guerre qui se fait et qu'on ne voit pas, et la nécessité d'imposer de nouvelles règles. Est-ce que vous pouvez revenir sur cette convention de Genève dont vous parliez tout à l'heure et que vous appelez de vos voeux?
Oui, en donnant le crédit à Brad Smith, donc le General Counsel de Microsoft. Donc c'est I do it in English or...
Whatever you're comfortable
Donc pour
with.
répondre à votre question, c'est symptomatique qu'un des leaders prenne l'initiative. Francis a mentionné l'intervention de Tim Cook. Apple a une position très claire sur les questions de privacy, y compris par rapport à ses propres autorités policières, le FBI notamment aux États-Unis. Donc on voit qu'il y a une prise de conscience, je dirais, qui correspond aussi au type de business model. Il faut quand même garder les choses en perspective. Mais dans le cas de cette initiative, c'est une prise de conscience au niveau de l'industrie. On doit empoigner le problème. Et donc, la proposition faite par Brad Smith, auquel j'adhère et le groupe que je représente adhère, c'est d'avoir le Tech Accord, c'est-à-dire, c'est le nom, c'est une adhésion volontaire d'entreprises, de tout secteur industriel, donc c'est plutôt le monde corporatif, des entreprises, pardon, et on dit, voilà, il y a un certain nombre de règles et on s'engage à se comporter de telle manière. On s'engage à partager de l'information. Je pense qu'il y a un point très important qui a été soulevé sur la notion de concurrence, et c'est vrai, alors ça c'est vu les milliards en jeu, mais pas en cybersecurity. Il n'y a pas d'avantage compétitif. On doit partager nos informations parce que tout ça nous coûte très cher pour quelque chose qui ne nous concerne pas vraiment. J'appelle ça, je fais la relation avec asymmetric warfare. Donc, et puis l'ambition, on verra si elle se matérialise prochainement, c'est de dire est-ce qu'on arrive, une fois qu'on a cette mobilisation de l'industrie, à mobiliser les gouvernements pour qu'eux-mêmes s'engagent dans un projet. Il y a des travaux qui sont en cours. Peut-être en novembre, on arrivera à présenter quelque chose, on verra. Et ensuite, de dire, est-ce qu'on peut aller jusqu'à une convention qui engagerait les États? Donc c'est un travail de plus longue haleine. Microsoft s'est engagé à mettre des ressources financières et humaines à disposition. Les autres participants également contribueront pour qu'il y ait des équipes qui puissent effectivement travailler et faire avancer ce dossier.
Alors, where's the person with the mic, please? You have several questions in the front, if you don't mind taking one.
Hello. Thank you very much to the panel for your points of view. So I work for one of the largest tech companies in Europe, Delivery Hero, And something which I think is particularly interesting is that in Europe, there are simply not such large major tech companies as there are in the US, as in China. And I think Mr. Nicolet, you just mentioned an initiative which has been being led by Microsoft. So what do you feel in terms of Europe simply not having such a large tech sector as China and the US? Do you feel that in a lot of this regulation, in creating this new global governance, that Europe might actually not be such a significant voice in the future?
Francis, would you like to answer?
Okay, well look, I think you've put your finger on something that's extremely important, namely that there are no internet giants in Europe. And it's a bit of a paradox. It arises, of course, from the cultural and linguistic diversity of Europe. So China has no problem with 1.2 billion people or more who use the same language, and the United States has 350 million or so, plus the hegemony of English, throughout the world. So, and the creation of good business models. So this is, I think, a huge competitive disadvantage because data, as Patrick has said, data is really the fuel of this digital economy. Having access to the data, we may well get good collaboration, but we may well also have a lot of competition. So here I think you're right on the ball, and I'm not quite sure how you deal with it. Of course, there are movements towards openness. We've seen it in open science, in open innovation to some extent, although I think it's a different phenomenon. But there is a lot of movements towards openness. But there are the opposite also, which is the essence of property, which is the power of closeness. And that is something that that is a tension that we are going to have to live out, and it's the same as the tension between collaboration and competition. And it's going to be at the center of our policy discussions and our policy frameworks for this new environment.
Interesting. I think there were more... wait. Une question. Promettez-moi une question.
Pardon?
Est-ce que vous pouvez poser une question, s'il vous plaît?
Je ne vous suis pas très bien, je n'ai pas très bien compris.
Je vous demande de poser une question, s'il vous plaît. Parce que souvent, vous faites des statements. Là, j'aurais aimé une question pour le panel, si vous le permettez.
Pour vous, je suis quelqu'un de catalogué qu'il faut réguler.
Non, pas du tout, mais on vous a beaucoup entendu. Et là, si tout le monde veut pouvoir poser une question, il faut que chacun pose une question.
Vous me donnez avec beaucoup d'habileté et d'élégance mon introduction. Alors, je me pose une question. Est-ce que le débat est un débat de régulation ou est-ce que c'est une question plus profonde? Je relève qu'hier, on est revenu souvent sur les questions de périphérie et de marginalité. On a relevé des espaces à l'échelon de la planète dits périphériques et oubliés. À l'intérieur des villes, on estime qu'il y a aussi des espaces de banlieue et autres qui sont considérés comme des périphéries. Hélène Arweller, recteur des universités européennes, a parlé de murs numériques. Et donc la grande question, est-ce que nous ne sommes pas dans une question plus profonde qui est un débat d'éthique, parce que la même question que l'économie est régulation, ou est-ce que notre approche économique doit changer? On en a parlé hier sur les différentes approches nouvelles des pays émergents. Et si c'est cela, je suggérerais qu'avant qu'on puisse avoir un Conseil de sécurité qui s'autoproclame capable de tout régler et sur lesquels les grandes compagnies auraient beaucoup d'influence, est-ce qu'on ne pourrait pas essayer d'inventer une dynamique démocratique qui commencerait par un sommet mondial d'éthique? On l'a eu, cette préoccupation, sur le sommet mondial social, on l'a sur le climat. Est-ce que ce n'est pas plutôt une nouvelle philosophie qui doit pouvoir alimenter? Et derrière cela, il y a un problème de représentativité. Alors je m'excuse, l'élément mécanique, je tenterai une autre fois de ne pas poser de questions, ça sera certainement plus arrangeant.
Je vous demandais juste une question.
Non, mais je vous remercie parce que vous m'avez distingué de façon assez particulière et il faudra que vous me l'expliquiez certainement en coulisses. Merci beaucoup.
Alors, il y a des questions éthiques et il y a en effet la question de l'exclusion. I'm thinking about smart cities. People out of those smart cities, for instance, Mr. Dae-whan, you know, there is big risk of exclusion in your world of, the perfect world of smart cities. Is this something you are worried about? And then the whole panel can address this question of ethics that is important. And as our guests have suggested, do we need to have this reflection before thinking about governance? Do we need a deeper reflection on ethics in general? Mr. Dae-whan, please.
Talking about ethics, it's quite troublesome to me, you know, because these cities I mentioned in Korea, it's a pilot project, and we don't quite really know how we're going to head for a new future. And ethics comes with different cultures, you know. I know there is a basic standard of ethics, but people have different religion and different family education. So it's, to me, it's very difficult to talk about ethics.
So do you think, all of us, that we would need a wider conversation about ethics? Francis, would you like to address this?
Well, look, I agree it's extremely difficult, but I think that with the speed of technological development, we're finding ourselves in a situation in which the law is over there, back in a different reality. And what's being challenged are the values of a society. So this space between the law and the values of a society, I think, is the space where we need to encourage the ethical dispute, which I think, the ethical discussion, which I think Patrick has mentioned, and I think it's exceptionally important. But we're in a world which doesn't have shared values. We also have to acknowledge.
Monsieur Nicolet?
No, I think I mentioned it, so building. I think if you look, we managed to govern the internet through a foundation based on a set of principles. And while I totally agree with Mr. Dae-whan, it's just a global ethical debate, I think it's unmanageable. You can still agree on a certain number of principles. And I think one you mentioned around digital inclusion should be part of what we want to achieve, personally. Now, it has to be debated. And then this notion of privacy. So there are a certain number of topics, I believe, as much as we could govern the openness of the internet, which has been challenged, notably because of a question of governance, because located in the US. We have to have a broader discussion beyond the internet. If you think blockchain, that Mr. Dae-whan mentioned, isn't another internet. It's a transactional internet on top of the communication internet that is the original internet. We cannot just say, oh, it's a technology that we deploy. We have to take this debate again, as we did at the inception of the internet. And I think, yes, ethics is one element, but we have to find principles.
OK, Monsieur Barrault?
Je vais répondre en français, parce que la question est en français. Avant d'avoir un débat éthique, il faut avoir un débat économique. J'ai fait une présentation l'année dernière sur le digital divide, ou la fracture digitale, qui est non seulement entre les pays, mais aussi intergénérationnelle. Et j'avais fait une carte du monde de l'accès à l'eau, à la nourriture et au digital. Et comme par hasard, c'est exactement pareil. Il faut se souvenir que Internet, qui a été la plus grosse révolution industrielle, qui a changé nos vies, j'en ai parlé tout à l'heure, mais qui a créé des trillions de dollars de valorisation boursière, a été construite sans aucune gouvernance. Aucune gouvernance, ça veut dire quoi? C'est que dans le pipe, vous avez des data, vous avez des paquets de data qui sont non discriminés. Ça veut dire que vous gagnez 100 millions de dollars sur une transaction, vous demandez l'heure, c'est pareil. Et la création de valeur, aujourd'hui, n'est pas réinjectée dans le système. Qu'est-ce qui se passe du coup? Une nouvelle économie s'est créée, ce qui fait qu'on gagne beaucoup plus d'argent en monétisant les datas. Et ces datas, d'ailleurs, on pense qu'elles sont souveraines, elles ne le sont pas du tout. Ces datas appartiennent à des entités que l'on ne maîtrise pas et qui les monétisent sur notre dos. Et ce qui fait qu'il y a des créations de valeur absolument incroyables. Et malheureusement, une grande partie de cet argent n'est pas réinjecté dans la vraie économie, le financement des infrastructures, la protection des données, etc., mais enrichissent des fonds de pension essentiellement anglo-saxons. Donc, pour moi, le débat éthique, c'est un débat de riches, un débat de cherry on the cake. Et je pense que le vrai débat pour moi, c'est l'accès au digital par l'ensemble de la population au même titre que l'eau, que la nourriture et que l'éducation. Quand vous amenez dans un village rural en Inde ou en Afrique du digital, de l'accès à la connaissance, vous voyez en 3 mois une transformation incroyable des enfants, des adolescents, des femmes ou ceux qui n'ont pas le titre de sachant et qui tout d'un coup se rapprochent du monde moderne, apprennent, etc. Donc avant de parler d'éthique, pour moi il me semble crucial de rebalancer cet équilibre économique qui est totalement d'ailleurs concentré. Hein. Vous allez en Corée, à Séoul où j'étais récemment, vous avez 1 gigabit dans votre hôtel, et vous allez dans certaines zones rurales, même en France, vous avez 0. Et ça, pour moi, c'est une vraie discrimination, puisque on est une société à 2 vitesses, en plus des conflits intergénérationnels, puisque nos enfants ont grandi avec l'Internet, nous, on n'a pas grandi avec l'Internet, et on se fait distancer. Même moi, qui suis à l'intérieur du système depuis 41 ans, ben, je me réveille certains matins en disant qu'est-ce qui se passe.
Tobby, and then we'll wrap up.
I have a quick point to make. The whole idea of ethics is going to be very personal. It's something that everybody will have to sort of look back and decide. Even within a family, you cannot define a standard of ethics. A father might have some, the children might have a different one. So how do you start generalizing that you would want to have an LCM or a HCF for ethics? There is a school of thought happening in many parts of the world that it might be hard to trust people, but why don't you trust machines? And you have a certain amount of technology that is going into blockchain, where the whole idea is don't trust the individual, trust the machine. The machine has a capability to more standardize rules and values. So why don't we go by it? So I'm just giving you an alternate perspective.
Okay, well, I think we've all grasped that it's a very, very complex question. There's really not one answer, and it's interesting to see that there are a lot of ways to think about it, and a lot of dimensions to it, business, ethics, governance. Though, a big round of applause for you, and thank you very much for your attention.